Mia Parker's fingers trembled as she typed the message on her cracked phone screen. The hospital bill, $58,000 for her daughter Zoe's emergency surgery, lay on the kitchen table of her small apartment, its red past-due stamp glaring up at her like an accusation. Outside, the November rain drummed against the windows, matching the rhythm of her racing heart. Zoe, only 11 months old, slept peacefully in the second-hand crib in the corner, blissfully unaware of the financial catastrophe threatening to swallow them whole. "I can't afford this," Mia whispered to herself, glancing at the bill again. "There's got to be a payment plan or something." She had intended to text her friend Jess, who worked in medical billing at the hospital, but in her exhaustion and panic, her fingers selected a different contact altogether. The text was simple. "I'm desperate. Zoe's hospital bill came in, $58,000. I don't know what to do. Can we talk about payment options? I've attached the bill." She hit send without double-checking the recipient, then placed her phone down and buried her face in her hands. Mia had been working double shifts at the diner for months, saving every penny for Zoe's future. At 24, she'd never imagined being a single mother, but when her boyfriend disappeared after learning of her pregnancy, she had no choice but to forge ahead alone. Her parents, struggling with their own financial problems in another state, could offer little more than emotional support. 3 miles across town, in the penthouse of the city's most exclusive residential building, Jack Callahan's phone buzzed. The 42-year-old CEO of Callahan Technologies had just finished a video conference with investors in Tokyo and was about to pour himself a rare glass of scotch, a small reward for securing a deal worth billions. He picked up his phone, expecting a message from his assistant about tomorrow's meetings. Instead, he found himself staring at a desperate plea from an unknown number and an attached hospital bill for a baby named Zoe Parker. His first instinct was to ignore it, clearly a wrong number, but something stopped him. Perhaps it was the raw desperation in those few lines of text, or perhaps it was the name Zoe, which had belonged to his sister, who died of leukemia when she was just 8 years old 30 years ago. Jack opened the attachment. The bill was from St. Mary's Hospital, the same hospital where his sister had spent her final days. The same hospital where, just last month, he had anonymously donated a new pediatric wing, though the public announcement was still weeks away. He sat down on his leather sofa, the scotch forgotten, and studied the bill more carefully. The charges were for emergency surgery to repair an intestinal blockage, a dangerous condition in infants. He thought about the sender, this unknown Mia, probably young and frightened, facing a sum that would take years to pay off, even if she had good insurance, which her desperate message suggested she didn't. Jack had grown up wealthy, the son of a real estate magnate, but he had built his own fortune from scratch, developing a revolutionary cybersecurity system that was now used by governments and corporations worldwide. He had more money than he could spend in several lifetimes, and no family to share it with. His marriage had ended 5 years ago, and his ex-wife had remarried and moved to Europe. They had no children, a fact that had contributed to their divorce and that Jack regretted more with each passing year. Something about this wrong number, this coincidence of names and places, stirred something inside him. Without analyzing his impulse too deeply, he typed a reply. "I think you have the wrong number, but I want to help. I'm going to take care of this bill, and I'm sending additional funds to help with your daughter's future care. I'm on my way to meet you, if that's okay." Then, before he could reconsider, he contacted his bank and arranged an immediate transfer of $2 million to be prepared for the account of Mia Parker, details to be finalized in person. He texted his driver to bring the car around, grabbed his coat and headed for the elevator, his heart racing with an excitement he hadn't felt in years. Mia was just about to collapse into bed when her phone chimed. She grabbed it, expecting a reply from Jess with advice about negotiating with the hospital billing department. The message she read instead made her sink to the floor in shock. A wrong number, $2 million. This has to be a scam, she muttered, though her heart raced with wild hope. She quickly searched Jack Callahan, CEO, on her phone and found herself looking at hundreds of news articles about one of the richest tech entrepreneurs in the country, a serious-looking man with salt and pepper hair and intense blue eyes, who had revolutionized digital security and was known for his philanthropy, though he generally avoided publicity. As she was processing this information, her phone rang, the same unknown number. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Is this Mia Parker?" a deep, calm voice asked. Yes, who is this? Jack Callahan. You accidentally sent me a text about your daughter's hospital bill. Mia's hand flew to her mouth. I'm so sorry, I meant to text my friend who works in billing. Please don't apologize, Jack interrupted gently. I'd like to help. I know this seems strange, but sometimes accidents happen for a reason. My driver and I are about 10 minutes from the address on the hospital bill. Would it be all right if I stopped by to talk? I understand if you're uncomfortable with that idea. Mia looked around her tiny apartment, at the second-hand furniture, the piles of laundry, the sink full of dishes she'd been too exhausted to wash. Meeting a stranger, even a famous billionaire, late at night seemed crazy. But something in his voice conveyed sincerity, and honestly, what did she have to lose? Yes, she said finally. I'll put on some coffee. While waiting, Mia quickly tidied the apartment, changed into clean jeans and a sweater, and checked on Zoe, who continued to sleep peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling, her recent surgery scar barely visible beneath her pajamas. Mia gently touched her daughter's soft cheek, overwhelmed by love and fear in equal measure. I'll figure this out, little one, she whispered. Somehow. The soft knock at her door came exactly 10 minutes later. Mia took a deep breath, smoothed her hair, and opened the door to find Jack Callahan standing in her hallway, looking exactly like his photos except for the warmth in his eyes that cameras had failed to capture. He wore an expensive but understated coat, and behind him stood a man who was clearly his driver and security. Ms. Parker, Jack said, extending his hand. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. I know this situation is unusual. As they shook hands, neither could have possibly imagined how this accidental text message would change both their lives forever, setting in motion events that would heal old wounds and create connections neither had dared to hope for. Mia gestured for Jack to enter the apartment, acutely aware of its shabbiness compared to what must be his usual surroundings. Please, come in. The coffee's ready. Thank you, Jack said, nodding to his driver. David, I'll call when I'm ready to leave. The driver hesitated. Sir, protocol says... It's fine, David. I'll be fine. There was gentle authority in Jack's voice that ended the discussion. The driver nodded reluctantly and retreated down the hallway. Inside, Jack removed his coat, revealing a simple grey sweater and dark jeans. Despite his casual attire, there was no disguising the aura of power that surrounded him, not the intimidating kind, but the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected thousands of lives. Your apartment is lovely, he said, and though it was clearly a polite fiction, his tone held no condescension. It's small, but it's home, Mia replied, pouring coffee into mismatched mugs. Her hands still trembled slightly. Cream or sugar? Black is fine, thank you. Jack accepted the mug and sat at her small kitchen table, his large frame making the furniture seem even more diminutive. His eyes fell on the hospital bill. May I? Mia nodded, sitting across from him. It's overwhelming. I have insurance through the diner where I work, but it's basic coverage. The surgery wasn't fully covered because it was considered specialized care. She took a sip of coffee to steady her nerves. I've been picking up extra shifts, but even with that... Jack studied the bill, his brow furrowed. The healthcare system can be merciless. He looked up at her. Miss Parker, Mia, please. Mia, I meant what I said in my message. I want to help with this bill and provide financial security for you and Zoe. As if on cue, a soft whimper came from the corner of the room. Mia immediately rose and went to the crib, lifting her daughter gently. Shh. It's okay, sweetie. Mommy's here. Jack watched the interaction, a complex emotion crossing his face. Zoe, now awake, regarded him with curious blue eyes from over her mother's shoulder. She's beautiful, Jack said softly. How old is she? 11 months next week, Mia answered, gently bouncing Zoe in her arms. She's usually a good sleeper, but since the surgery... She trailed off, kissing the top of her daughter's head. May I ask what happened? The bill mentioned intestinal surgery. Mia nodded, returning to her seat with Zoe in her lap. It was terrifying. She started vomiting and screaming in pain one night. I rushed her to the emergency room. They discovered she had intestinal malrotation with volvulus. Basically, part of her intestine was twisted. It required emergency surgery. Her voice broke slightly. The doctors said if I'd waited even a few more hours... Jack's expression softened further. You saved her life with your quick action. Mia smiled weakly. Any parent would do the same. She paused, studying him. Mr. Callahan? Jack, please. Jack, I appreciate your offer, but I have to ask, why? You don't know us. This was a wrong number. A mistake. Jack set down his coffee mug and was quiet for a moment, as if considering how much to share. Sometimes mistakes aren't really mistakes, he finally said. My sister's name was Zoe. She died at St. Mary's Hospital, the same hospital on your bill, when she was 8 years old. Leukemia. He looked directly at Mia. That was 30 years ago, but some things stay with you. I'm so sorry, Mia said, instinctively reaching across the table to touch his hand. The gesture surprised them both, and she quickly withdrew. Thank you. It was a long time ago, but it shaped me. Jack's gaze returned to baby Zoe, who was now contentedly playing with her mother's necklace. When I received your text, it felt like... I don't know how to explain it without sounding strange. It felt like an opportunity the universe was placing in my path. To help us because of your sister, Mia asked gently. Partly that, yes, but also... Jack hesitated, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. Mia, I have more money than I could spend in several lifetimes. I donate to charities, fund research, build hospital wings, but it's all distant, impersonal. Your text, it was direct, human, a chance to make a tangible difference. Zoe squirmed in Mia's lap, and she set the baby down carefully. Immediately, Zoe pulled herself up using the coffee table and took a few wobbly steps toward Jack, curious about this new person. Jack's eyes widened. She's walking already? Just started last week, Mia said proudly. The doctors were amazed at how quickly she recovered from surgery. Zoe reached Jack and placed a tiny hand on his knee, looking up at him with solemn curiosity. Without hesitation, Jack gently lifted her, allowing her to stand supported on his knees. The baby broke into a delighted grin, revealing 4 tiny teeth. Hello there, Zoe, he said softly. Mia watched them, conflicted emotions churning inside her. The man sitting in her kitchen offering life-changing money was no longer just a famous name or face from the internet. He was a person with his own grief and history, forming an unexpected connection with her daughter. About your offer, she began carefully. It's incredibly generous, but $2 million it's too much. I couldn't possibly accept that. Jack looked up from Zoe. It's not too much from my perspective. And it would ensure that Zoe has everything she needs. The best medical care, education, opportunities. He paused. No strings attached, Mia. This isn't about control or obligation. Consider it a blessing that came through a wrong number. But why not just pay the hospital bill? Why $2 million? Jack's expression grew serious. Because financial insecurity affects everything. Your stress levels, your health, your ability to be present for Zoe. The bill is just one symptom of a larger problem. I want to solve the problem, not just treat a symptom. Mia fell silent, absorbing his words. She'd been struggling financially her entire adult life, working multiple jobs since she was 16. The idea of that burden being lifted was almost impossible to comprehend. I don't know what to say, she finally admitted. You don't have to decide tonight, Jack assured her. I've arranged for the hospital bill to be paid immediately, regardless of your decision about the rest. Take some time to think. Zoe, still standing on Jack's knees, reached up and patted his cheek, eliciting a genuine smile from the CEO. It transformed his face, softening the lines that responsibility and solitude had etched there over the years. Mia suddenly realized she'd never asked about his own family. Do you have children, Jack? A shadow crossed his face. No. My ex-wife and I tried for years, but it wasn't meant to be. That was part of why our marriage ended. I'm sorry, Mia said, and meant it. She couldn't imagine life without Zoe, despite all the challenges of single parenthood. Life takes unexpected turns, Jack replied philosophically. 5 years ago, I thought I'd have a family by now. Instead, I have a company that employs thousands and technology used around the world. It's a different kind of legacy. The quiet sincerity in his voice touched something in Mia. This man who seemingly had everything was revealing an emptiness at the center of his success, one that perhaps explained his impulsive generosity toward a stranger and her child. As Zoe began to fuss, Mia took her back, cradling her close. It's past her bedtime. Would you excuse me for a moment while I put her down? Jack nodded, and Mia carried Zoe to the crib, softly singing a lullaby as she rocked her daughter back to sleep. When she returned, she found Jack standing by her small bookshelf examining a framed photograph. "Is this your family?" he asked. "Yes, my parents and my younger brother. That was taken at my high school graduation before everything changed." "Before everything changed?" Jack asked, setting the photo back on the shelf. His eyes held genuine curiosity rather than mere politeness. Mia sat down on the worn sofa and gestured for Jack to join her. "My dad was laid off from the factory where he'd worked for 20 years. Then Mum got sick, breast cancer. They lost their house, moved into a small apartment. I had to drop out of college to help support them." She shrugged slightly. "It's a common story, I guess. The American dream unraveling one thread at a time." Jack sat beside her, his expression thoughtful. "And your brother?" "Ryan got a scholarship to study engineering. He's in his final year now. I insisted he stay in school, even when he wanted to drop out to help." Pride colored her voice. "He's going to be the first college graduate in our family." "You sacrificed your own education for him," Jack observed. "It wasn't really a choice. Someone had to keep things going, and he had the better opportunity." Mia smiled faintly. "Besides, I was only studying business administration because I thought it was practical. I wasn't passionate about it." "What are you passionate about?" Jack asked, and the genuine interest in his voice made the question feel significant rather than casual. Mia hesitated. It had been so long since anyone had asked her about her dreams rather than her problems. "I love cooking," she admitted. "Not just diner food, though I've gotten pretty good at that. I experiment with recipes when I can afford the ingredients. I've always dreamed of having a small cafe someday. Nothing fancy, just a place where people feel welcome and well-fed." "That's a wonderful dream," Jack said, "and entirely achievable." Their eyes met, and for a moment Mia allowed herself to imagine it. A sunlit cafe with plants in the windows, the aroma of fresh bread and coffee, Zoe playing in a safe corner, while Mia created dishes that made people smile. The image was so vivid, it almost hurt. The moment was interrupted by Mia's phone buzzing insistently on the coffee table. She glanced at it and frowned. "It's the hospital. They never call this late unless..." Her heart clenched as she answered quickly. "Hello?" Jack watched as Mia's expression shifted from concern to confusion to astonishment. "But that's impossible," she was saying. "There must be some mistake." "Yes, I understand, but..." "Oh, I see." Her eyes darted to Jack, who maintained a carefully neutral expression. "Yes, thank you for letting me know. Good night." She set the phone down slowly, as if it might break. "That was the billing department. They called to inform me that Zoe's entire bill has been paid in full, plus an additional $50,000 placed in an account for any future medical needs." Her voice trembled slightly. "They said an anonymous donor specifically requested that we be notified immediately so we wouldn't worry." Jack said nothing, but the slight lift at the corner of his mouth gave him away. "You didn't wait for me to decide," Mia said, torn between gratitude and something like indignation. "I just went ahead and did it." "The hospital bill needed immediate attention," Jack replied calmly. "The rest is still entirely up to you. If you decide not to accept further help, that's your choice. But I couldn't let you spend another night worrying about that bill." Mia stood abruptly and walked to the window, hugging herself as she stared out at the rain-slicked street below. The enormity of what was happening hit her all at once. This wealthy, powerful stranger intervening in her life like some modern-day fairy godfather. It was disorienting, almost frightening in its suddenness. "Why me?" she asked softly, not turning around. "There are millions of people struggling with medical bills. What makes us special?" Jack remained seated, giving her the space she seemed to need. "I told you about my sister. That's part of it. But there's more." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Mia, successful people like to believe they've earned everything through hard work and intelligence. The truth is more complicated. Luck plays an enormous role. Who your parents are, where you're born, what opportunities arise, even which wrong numbers you receive." He stood but didn't approach her. "I work hard, yes. I'm good at what I do, but I also benefited from tremendous privilege and lucky breaks. What I'm offering you isn't charity. It's a rebalancing of fortune's scales in a very small way." Mia turned to face him, her expression challenging. "And it has nothing to do with fulfilling some need to be a savior, to feel good about yourself?" Instead of being offended, Jack seemed impressed by her directness. I won't pretend my motives are purely altruistic. Helping you and Zoe does make me feel good. Is that so wrong? No, Mia admitted after a moment. It's human. Exactly. This isn't about saving you, Mia. You were already saving yourself, working double shifts, caring for Zoe, supporting your brother through college. You're clearly capable and resilient. His voice softened. But even the strongest people deserve a break sometimes, a chance to breathe and build something sustainable, rather than just surviving day to day. His words struck a chord deep within her. How long had it been since she'd thought beyond immediate necessities? Since she'd allowed herself to want more than just making it to the next paycheck? I'm scared, she confessed, the words escaping before she could stop them. Not of you, but of what this means. How it would change everything. Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. Change is always frightening, even when it's positive. A thought suddenly occurred to Mia, and her eyes narrowed. What exactly do you get out of this, Jack? You mentioned no strings attached, but in my experience there's always some expectation. To her surprise, Jack laughed, a genuine warm sound that transformed his face. You're direct. I like that. He sobered quickly. I get the satisfaction of making a tangible difference in someone's life. That's it. I don't expect anything from you. Not gratitude, not friendship, certainly nothing inappropriate. And if I accepted your help and then never spoke to you again? That would be entirely your right, Jack said simply, though I admit I'd be disappointed not to see how Zoe grows up. The honesty in his voice was disarming. Mia found herself studying him more carefully. The lines around his eyes that spoke of both laughter and strain, the slight grey at his temples, the way he held himself with quiet confidence rather than arrogance. I need time to think, she finally said. This is too big a decision to make in one night. Of course, Jack agreed immediately. Take all the time you need, the offer won't expire. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, placing it on the coffee table. My personal number is on the back. Call or text any time for any reason. He moved toward the door, then hesitated. There's one more thing I should tell you, something that might affect your decision. Mia tensed, waiting for the catch she'd been expecting all along. I'm leaving the country next week, Jack continued. I'll be in Singapore for 3 months, overseeing the opening of our new Asia-Pacific headquarters. After that, I'm not sure where business will take me. He met her eyes directly. What I'm trying to say is that accepting my help doesn't mean I'll be hovering over your life. You'll have space and independence to use the resources as you see fit. The knot of tension in Mia's chest loosened slightly. Thank you for telling me that, Jack nodded, reaching for his coat. As he put it on, a thought seemed to strike him. Would you and Zoe like to have dinner tomorrow? Somewhere casual, public? It might help you to get to know me a bit better before you decide. The invitation surprised Mia. It was the last thing she'd expected from this brief, surreal encounter. Not more money or conditions, but simply an invitation to dinner, offered almost hesitantly. Okay, she found herself saying. Dinner would be nice. Jack's smile was understated but genuine. I'll text you tomorrow to arrange the details. He opened the door, then turned back. Thank you, Mia. For what? For not dismissing me as crazy when I showed up at your door. For listening. For letting me meet Zoe. His expression held a vulnerability that seemed at odds with his public persona. Good night. After he left, Mia stood in the middle of her apartment, feeling as though a whirlwind had swept through, rearranging everything while leaving the physical space untouched. She checked on Zoe, who continued to sleep peacefully, unaware that her entire future might have just been transformed by a single mistyped message. Mia picked up Jack's business card, running her fingers over the embossed lettering. Something told her that her life and Jack Callahan's had become entangled in ways neither of them could possibly predict. The following evening, Mia found herself sitting across from Jack at a small Italian restaurant downtown. It wasn't extravagantly upscale, but it was certainly nicer than anywhere she had eaten in years. Zoe sat in a high chair between them, happily smashing pieces of bread and occasionally offering soggy morsels to both adults with generous magnanimity. She has your smile, Jack observed, accepting a piece of bread from Zoe's tiny hand with exaggerated gratitude. And her father's stubbornness, Mia replied, then immediately regretted mentioning Zoe's father. It was a topic she generally avoided. Jack seemed to sense her discomfort. You don't have to talk about him if you'd rather not. Mia took a sip of water, considering. Over the past 24 hours, she'd thought constantly about Jack's offer, researched him extensively online, and even called the hospital to confirm that her bill had indeed been paid. Everything checked out. If she was going to accept his help, a possibility she was increasingly leaning toward, she felt she owed him some honesty. "His name is Daniel," she began. "We dated for almost 2 years. When I got pregnant, he seemed excited at first. We talked about getting married, finding a bigger place." She shrugged slightly. "Then he started staying out late, coming home drunk. When I was 7 months pregnant, he told me he'd been offered a job in California. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. He left the next day." "I'm sorry," Jack said, and the simple sincerity in his voice made Mia believe him. "It was for the best," she said firmly. "Zoe deserves better than a father who doesn't want to be there." "Like you had with your own father," Jack observed. When Mia looked surprised, he added, "You spoke about him with such respect last night. It was clear you had a good relationship." "I did. He was devastated when he lost his job, felt like he'd failed us, but he never stopped trying, never stopped being present." Mia smiled at the memory. "Even when he was working 3 part-time jobs, he still made it to my volleyball games." Their conversation paused as the waiter brought their food, chicken parmesan for Mia and linguine with clams for Jack. Zoe received a small bowl of plain pasta, which she immediately began exploring with enthusiastic fingers. "And what about you?" Mia asked as they began eating. "You mentioned your divorce, but not much else about your personal life." Jack considered the question. "There's not much to tell, honestly. I work too much. I live alone in a penthouse that's too big for one person. I have acquaintances rather than friends." He gave a self-deprecating smile. "It's a cliché, isn't it? The successful man who's built an empire, but not a life." "Is that why you responded to my text? Loneliness?" The question was bold, but Mia had decided that if she was going to accept life-changing money from this man, she needed to understand his motivations. "Partly," Jack admitted, surprising her with his candor. "But it's more complicated than that. For years I've been donating to causes, setting up foundations, funding research, all worthy endeavors, but removed from actual human impact. Your text was immediate, personal, a real person with a real problem that I could solve directly." He paused. "Does that make sense?" Mia nodded slowly. "It does, actually." Jack watched as Zoe attempted to feed herself, managing to get about half the pasta in her mouth and the rest on her face and clothing. "She's remarkable," he said softly. "She is," Mia agreed, her heart swelling with love as she always did when looking at her daughter. "Stubborn, curious, completely fearless, like her mother," Jack observed with a smile. Mia laughed. "I'm hardly fearless. I'm terrified most of the time." "Being brave isn't about not feeling fear," Jack said. "It's about feeling it and moving forward anyway. By that definition, you're one of the bravest people I've ever met." The compliment warmed Mia unexpectedly. There was something about Jack Callahan that defied her expectations. Despite his wealth and status, he spoke to her as an equal, listened attentively, and showed genuine interest in her life and opinions. Throughout dinner, they discussed books, films, travel destinations Mia had always dreamed of seeing, and Jack's experiences growing up with a famous father but wanting to make his own way. By the time they finished dessert, a tiramisu they shared while Zoe dozed off in her high chair, Mia had made her decision. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said, setting down her fork. Jack straightened slightly, his expression carefully neutral. "And?" "I'd like to accept, with conditions." Mia met his gaze steadily. "First, I want to establish a proper legal framework. This needs to be done right, with documentation, so there's no confusion or complications later." Jack nodded. "Absolutely. I'll have my lawyers draw up whatever paperwork you'd like." "Second," Mia continued, "I want a significant portion put in a trust for Zoe's education, something I can't touch except for her schooling." "That's wise," Jack agreed. "Third, I'd like your help in developing a business plan for my cafe. Not your money for that. I'll use some of what you're giving us, but your expertise. I want to build something sustainable, something that can support us long term." Jack's eyes lit up with genuine pleasure. "I'd be honored to help with that. It's actually something I enjoy, the business development stage. And finally, Mia said, her voice softening slightly, I'd like us to stay in touch. Not out of obligation, but because I think Zoe and I would both benefit from having you in our lives. She hurried to clarify, as a friend. I'm not looking for... Neither am I, Jack assured her quickly. Friendship is exactly what I was hoping for. The relief on both their faces was evident, and a moment of understanding passed between them, an acknowledgement that whatever was developing here was valuable precisely because it came without romantic expectations or complications. As they left the restaurant, Jack's driver waiting discreetly at the curb, Jack turned to Mia. There's something else I'd like to propose if you're open to it. What's that? Mia asked, adjusting the sleeping Zoe in her arms. I own a building downtown that has a vacant storefront. It used to be a coffee shop before the pandemic. The location is excellent, near the courthouse and office buildings. He paused. It would be perfect for a cafe. Mia's heart began to race. Are you offering to rent it to me? Actually, I was thinking of a partnership. You would have complete creative control. Menu, decor, staffing, everything that makes it your vision. I would provide the space and initial capital as my investment. We'd split the profits. But you don't need profits from a small cafe, Mia pointed out. Jack smiled. No, but you need a partner who understands business and can handle the financial and legal aspects while you focus on creating something special. And he hesitated, I need a project that matters to actual people, not just shareholders. The offer was tempting, even more so than the money. This was an opportunity to create something, to build her dream with expert guidance. I'll think about it, Mia promised. 3 months later, as spring blossomed across the city, Mia stood in the center of a bright, airy space that smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. Large windows let in streams of sunlight, illuminating the polished wood floors and comfortable seating arrangements. The kitchen gleamed with professional-grade equipment, and hand-painted signs announced the cafe's name, Zoe's Place. Jack stood beside her, having returned from Singapore just 2 days earlier. It's perfect, he said, taking in the space they had created together through countless video calls and text messages during his time abroad. It's exactly how I imagined it, Mia agreed, watching as Zoe, now 14 months old and walking confidently, explored the special children's corner they had designed with colorful, safe furniture and toys. The door chimed as Mia's parents entered, looking around with pride and amazement. Behind them came Mia's brother Ryan, home from college for the grand opening, and several of Mia's friends from the diner where she had worked until just a month ago. I can't believe this is really happening, Mia's mother said, embracing her daughter with tears in her eyes. Your own cafe. As Mia introduced Jack to her family, explaining how they had met through a mistakenly sent text message, she marveled at how completely her life had transformed in just a few months. The medical bills were long paid, her parents had moved into a comfortable new apartment near Mia's own upgraded home, and Zoe's future was secure. But more than the financial changes, it was the sense of possibility that had transformed Mia. For the first time since she was a teenager, she was building something rather than just surviving. As her family explored the cafe, Jack touched Mia's arm lightly. I have something for you, he said, handing her a small wrapped package. Inside, Mia found a beautiful leather-bound recipe journal with Zoe's Place embossed on the cover. On the first page, Jack had written, Sometimes the wrong number is exactly the right connection. Here's to happy accidents and new beginnings. Mia looked up at Jack, the man who had started as a stranger and become one of her closest friends, and felt a surge of gratitude for that fateful texting error. Thank you, she said simply, knowing he would understand all the things those 2 words encompassed. Together they joined her family, ready to celebrate not just the opening of a cafe, but the unexpected friendship that had changed everything, a connection neither had been looking for, but both had desperately needed.